Welcome to the Monday, June 25th, 2012 meeting of the Glendale Transportation and Parking Commission. Can we have roll call, please?
Item 1A, roll call. Commissioner Weisman?
Here.
Commissioner Sahakian?
Here.
Commissioner Yakubian? Here. Commissioner Mangasarian?
Here.
Chairperson Fuad?
Here. Let us rise and salute our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item, please.
Item 2 is posting of the agenda. The agenda for the Monday, June 25th, 2012 regular meeting of the Glendale Transportation and Parking Commission was posted by Friday, June 22nd, 2012 before 5:30 p.m. on the bulletin board outside of City Hall.
Thank you. Next item.
Item 3 is approval of minutes. Item 3A is the April 23rd, 2012 regular meeting minutes.
Have folks had a chance to look at the minutes? Do you have any corrections?
Nothing from me.
No comments from my side.
I'm sure. Do we just move on, I think, then? Motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
That's it? Okay, very good. We have a special presentation this evening. It will just take a few moments on the Transportability Expo from Saturday's event. Catherine Engel has some photos. Ms. Engel?
Thank you, Chairman Fuad. We just wanted to give you a few quick highlights about Saturday's event. Our Transportability Expo is a requirement of our public outreach because we are federally funded, and we'd like to make sure that everyone has access to our transportation services. So this is part of our outreach to the disabled community, to older adults in our community, and to those who just want to learn what it's like to ride the bus or to use paratransit services. We provided opportunities for residents to learn how to ride the bus, everything from reading schedules, learning schedules, how to board and get off the bus. We had a number of persons with seeing eye dogs, many of which were in training, that made use of the facilities both to acclimate the dogs to getting on and off the buses, but also to show others that the buses are really accessible to persons with a variety of disabilities. We had this is showing some of our persons, they're using wheelchairs, a person with disabilities, getting on and off the Beeline buses. We had an 80-year-old woman who had never ridden the bus before and said this was her first opportunity to get on a bus and try it out, and she thought this was great. She shouldn't have waited that long to check it out. We had a number of partners that helped us put on and produce the event. On the top right corner, we had a vendor that provided wheelchair adjustments and some repairs. And you can see we have a guide dog learning that a person with a visual impairment can actually use a wheelchair lift to go up and down into the vehicle. That may make it more convenient for them to board, especially with some of the vehicles that have steps. This event was for more than just those who were disabled. We also had programs and opportunities for older adults to learn about senior programs that are available to them, whether it was Automobile Club or the Hartford Insurance programs. And we also had a lot of families come that took the opportunity to learn how to ride the bus and see the other features that were available. One of the vendors brought an MV1 vehicle. It is a new vehicle that is out on the market. We are starting to use it in a paratransit service, so we were looking at using it for our Dial-A-Ride program. So we actually had a vehicle there on site that we could get people to come on and check out the space. It's a little bit more roomy on the inside, and try to get feedback from some of our Dial-A-Ride customers of the preference for this vehicle over our current minivans. For entertainment and also an opportunity to get to learn about other groups here in town, we have a wheelchair soccer club that is a competitive club. They play up at Glendale College. And they came out and did a wheelchair soccer demonstration. We are working with them for some transport activities with our Dollar Ride program. But they were fun to watch and real supporters of our program that we had. We'd like to also thank the sponsors that we had that really made this program available. We had Jewel City Kiwanis provide lunch or food for all of the workers and the participants that came to the event. And Glendale Memorial Hospital and Health Center that has a senior program that we've partnered with in our Dollar Ride program. Our community sponsor was Glendale Adventist Medical Center. They also have a seniors program, and they are a new partner with us on our Dollar Ride program. We're looking forward to do a partnership with their programs as we move through this next year. And then we have a corporate sponsor, which was Checker Cab and City Cab, that provided a considerable amount of funding that let us enable us to do this program. We are featuring at the event the wheelchair accessible taxi services that they provide. So we just wanted to point out that we've done a really neat outreach to the disabled and older adults in our community. It was very well received. We haven't gone through all of the process yet to evaluate the event. We had over 100 people register through that process, and they'll all be getting an evaluation form to give us some feedback of, where did we make it, where did we miss, what else is out there, how can they help us to communicate this for our event that we have in the future. With that, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Next item, please.
Item 4 is oral communication. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. The commission may question the speaker, but there will be no debate or discussion.
I don't have any cards for oral communication, but let me remind the audience, if anybody wants to speak on the Glendale speed humps, please give us your cards so you may speak during the hearing. The cards are in the back of the room, and please give them to her, and she'll give them to me. With that, next item, please. Mr. Magdanian?
Mr. Chairman, members of the Transportation and Parking Commission, I have a brief presentation on the installation of speed humps on Glendale Avenue between Glen Oaks Boulevard and Glenwood Avenue. Anush, could you please... Thank you. In your staff report, we have a map of the area where the speed hump is located between Glen Oaks and Glenwood, just north of Glen Oaks, West Glen Oaks Boulevard. The residents on Great Road have complained about speeding on this block, and they've constantly experienced the speeding that occurs. It's a fairly narrow street, and given the fact that parking occurs in the driveway to the residents. The residents park their cars in their driveways. People are going up and down north on this street on Great Knoll. They always have creating a speeding issue with the residents, or people trying to back out of their driveways, especially during the peak hours, becomes a problem. And one of the facts that is also important to note that Great Knoll also has a signalized intersection at the intersection of Glen Oaks. So the other streets that are to the east and to the west do not have a median break. So that is basically a shortcut that people are using if they're going to, they're making left turn from Glen Oaks to go onto Great Knoll, or if they're coming up Great Knoll If they want to go to Idlewood, or they want to go to Cleveland or Norton, this becomes a street where you could access the street. So not necessarily all that traffic that is going up Graynold belongs to Graynold. It is some of the side street if they're accessing from Glen Oaks. We have the request, which is typical. We send, if there's a residents are complaining about speeding and traffic that is occurring on their street, we ask them to file a petition, and as required in our traffic calming program, and the residents have filed the petition, and they have complained about the speeding problem as part of the petition that they have submitted. As required in our engineering analysis for the traffic calming program, we've done the surveys, we've done the volume counts, we've done speed survey, we've done field surveys, and as shown in this table, which is our traffic calming table where we evaluate different components in order to determine a street meets the requirement, the number of travel lanes is 1 lane in each direction, and Graynold has that. It meets that requirement. It's residential in nature. It is a local street. It's not a collector, but a local street. Speed limit is 25, which is what is required. The traffic volume between 1,000 to 10,000 ADT. If it's lower than 1,000, we normally do not recommend installation of speed humps, but it's very close to 1,949, and please keep in mind that whenever we do traffic counts, there's about a 5 to 10% fluctuations on the typical day when the counts are done. And if the speeds are more than 30 miles per hour, in our guidelines we allow that we lower the threshold instead of 1,000 to a lower threshold. So we're not considering this that is not meeting the volume requirement because it does have a higher speed than normal. What we measure on typical residential streets on the average is 32 to 33 miles an hour. It's not a transit route, it's not a fire emergency response route, and the street is 36 wide compared minimum or maximum is 40 when we consider installation of speed humps, and the minimum requirement for submitting a petition is 75%, and the residents have collected 78% of the signatures on that street. And in support of the speed hump, from 50 residential streets that live on the street, 39 have signed the petition, and 4 of the residents that couldn't make it, they called and said that they had signed the petition and they wanted to say that they're in favor of installation of the speed humps. We got 2 residents who have called, again, couldn't make the meeting, but they said that they're not in favor of the installation of the speed humps. Staff has evaluated the street, as I stated in our table, and it meets the requirement for installation of speed humps. We've looked at any other alternatives in terms of what else can be done on this street, and there's nothing else in our toolbox we can offer to say street that has almost 1,000 cars a day, the speeds are 35 miles per hour, and we believe a good percentage of that is traffic which is going through Graynold and causing the inconvenience for the resident and causes a safety problem. So we're recommending to the Transportation Parking Commission that this street be considered for installation of 3 speed humps. The exact placement of those will be determined in the field, but we have notified all the residents about the location, approximate location of the humps. We had one problem with one of the humps, and we've shifted that over, so we don't believe that becomes a problem as far as actual installation, physical installation of the hump. With that, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions. We've also notified the residents about the date and time of the meeting today, and I believe they are here present to provide input to the Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. And if I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, if I understand it, they've met the requirements for the speed bump, but ultimately it's our decision whether they actually go in or not?
That's correct. The Commission makes that decision.
I have a number of cards, and I'll call you in order. Please, when you come up here, please state your name, and I think we have, let's say 3 minutes to speak, and that'd be fine. The first person I have is Andrew Hallback. Please state your name.
Good evening. I'm Andrew Hallbach. I live at 1215 Graynold. Thank you for considering these speed humps. I certainly hope you approve them. I'm all in favor of them. I've lived there for 12 years. In the time I've lived there, I'm aware of 2 speed studies, one which I petitioned the Traffic Bureau for, and one of my other neighbors did previous to that. One thing I wanted to add on one of your comments, you mentioned that most of the residents park in their driveway. I would say that more than half the residents actually park on the street, thus making it even more narrow and thus making the safety concern for speeding vehicles even greater. If you travel that vehicle any time, from 4 o'clock in the afternoon till first thing in the morning, you're going to find lots of cars parked on the street. We have a big problem with nighttime 70, 80 mile an hour people driving up there really fast, regularly. I hope you approve this. I'm an avid gardener. I'm out in my yard a lot. I work freelance, so I'm home a lot during the day, in the evening. Most of the people in our block either have young kids or they're over 80. So both groups need a lot of protection. And please approve this. Thank you.
Thank you. Ed Dyer?
Hello, my name is Ed Dwyer. Thank you, Chairman and members. I have owned a piece of property on Glendale and Glen Oaks for 33 years. Over the time, we've had a number of accidents that have happened not only on that intersection, but all the way up the street, side swipes, accidents of that nature. The problem is the speed bumps. The problem would go away if the speed bumps were installed. In addition to that, it becomes a thoroughfare because the alley that parallels Glen Oaks Boulevard, which is where my property borders, is a constant thoroughfare that not only feeds into that intersection, in addition to the cars that are coming off the stoplight that feed into the intersection, it becomes a traffic jam at the corner of the alley and the intersection, which is about 150 feet from the intersection. So there's a lot of traffic and horn honking that go on there. In all the 30 some odd years that I've owned this piece of property, I have never seen so much traffic in my years of existence there, that in the last 10 years the traffic pattern seems to have doubled, maybe tripled. And as the previous speaker before me said, the speeds are enormous up down that street. And not only is it the speeds, it's the exhaust pipes on some of these cars that are very high-powered engines, and it just echoes throughout the whole street. So I hope that this panel would approve it. My tenants have constantly complained about it. They can't even actually go out into the alley to empty their garbage without traffic pattern going that direction too, through the alley and all the way up to Norton, straight through Glendale. So I thank you for your time. Looking forward to having some speed bumps. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask a question.
Sure.
If I may.
Yes.
Yes, if you can come back up. So if we're to install speed humps on Glendale, would you say that the traffic volume on the alley will go up? People will start using the alley?
Well, that's a different item that I would like to speak to too. I wasn't going to bring it up. It would be helpful if there was speed bumps in the alley too, because people that go up and down that alley are about 35, 40 miles an hour. That is a problem. Maybe, I've given this some thought, maybe if the alleys were one ways, opposite directions as they meet into either Norton, Idlewild, or Glendale, so they couldn't use that as a thoroughfare to beat the stoplight that's at this corner. A lot of them will do that. They'll say, well, the stoplight is red, and the stoplight is I'm not sure what the time is, but there's a left-hand turn both on Glen Oaks Boulevard onto Glendale going either way. And then there's the normal pattern of traffic. I don't know how long that is, but it's a long time on Glen Oaks Boulevard. and on gray knolls, so a person will be sitting at that light for a long period of time. And what they'll try to do is that they'll try to beat it by going up to the alley, hoping to go up to where the 7-Eleven is, and there's a stoplight there, or else they'll go the other direction till they get to another stoplight. So there is an issue there too, but I think we need to address this issue first. The other issue, if it's a problem, we can address that at a later date.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Bagdanian, as a point of interest, do we have traffic calming for alleys?
Mr. Chairman, we have installed, I want to say, a couple of locations. One is in North Glendale that we've actually installed speed humps, not the size that we installed, but we've had these prefab speed humps that are rubber, and we install them in the alleys because of something similar to this, that where there's shortcutting through the alley, and that created, it was behind the residential. I'm trying to remember the alley and the street, but we have installed them in alleys. And it's something we can look into in terms of that evaluation of if there is a problem with the alley right here, which if that's causing additional problems.
Boyce Miller?
Good evening. Thank you all for considering what we've been asking here. It's very important to all of us. I've lived with my wife at 1225 Gray Knoll. My name is Boyce Miller. We've lived there since 1997, and we've also seen quite a rise in the amount of traffic coming through there for various reasons, part of which came about when there was traffic mitigation done over near the schools. So during the school day, as people are coming and going, we get quite a bit of traffic coming down our street as well. We had an accident smack in the middle of smack in the front of our house several years ago, in which a young man was racing up the street, messing with his phone, he said, and he ran into the light pole and almost hit our tree. You can still see the big chunk out of the base of it there. And I myself, going down the street, was struck by someone coming out of the alley that the gentleman mentioned just before me here. This was about 3 years ago. Again, this was during rush hour traffic in the morning. I was going to work and someone was cutting through that same alley. There's a psychological thing that also happens when people are coming from the school and also from the block above us, which is narrower. The street up there is about a lane narrower than our street. So people naturally, when they get to that slightly wider street down there, they think, okay, great, now I can pick up a little speed and get on down the hill. Plus it is downhill, and there's an optical illusion down at the bottom of the hill where you can't really tell you've gotten to the bottom of the hill because the curve does not stop. There's a little curve that starts right past where that alley is, and it'll fool you every time. People coming up the hill have no indication of the speed. It doesn't matter that we tell people it's 25. There's not a sign anywhere on our block. The only sign on the street is in the block beyond us. So even signage would help, but that's not going to slow people down as much as having some speed humps in there just to mitigate the fact that people speed up and speed down. On top of that, we have a lot of racing on Glen Oaks, as many people know, and our street is one of the popular ones because they get to come all the way down from Burbank to us before they get to Highland, and they cut right up our street and head up into the hills. And we've had many incidents of squiggling tires, people narrowly missing cars that are parked there. And as other people have mentioned, we have a wide range of people that are there using the streets, walking on the streets, walking with their pets, children. We have people in their 90s there, not just their 80s, but their 90s, and we just need a safer street. So please consider this in the positive for us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Francis Browlett, forgive me.
If it wasn't my last name, I wouldn't know how to pronounce it. But it's Bramlett. Good evening. As the gentlemen before me have mentioned, we are looking to have the speed bumps installed. I have lived on Graynold, 1145, for 20 years now. The day after we closed escrow 20 years ago, I petitioned for the speed bumps. Unfortunately, I was looking for the letter that said, sorry, you're out of luck. And then the other residents who have requested other, I guess they come out with the readers for the strips that come.
Yes, there's a tube for counting cars.
Yes. And I'm not sure if it's in the mornings because of the light at Graynold down at Glen Oaks. We are a major thoroughfare in the mornings for any of the parents dropping the kids off up at the 3 schools that we have 4 blocks away. I'm not sure if you're all aware of that. In the afternoons, the same thing. When parents are picking their kids up, we have all of that traffic. In the afternoon, or the later afternoon, as Boyce said, we have people going home. Of course, everybody wants to rush and get out of their car, make dinner, whatever it is. But unfortunately, we are the ones who suffer whatever the unfortunate consequences are. In the 20 years that I've lived there, there have been, that I know of, 7 accidents. As a matter of fact, Mr. Dwyer, I believe he owns the apartment building down at the end of the street that, unfortunately, a resident who lives on Graynold above Glenwood took out 3 or 4 cars that were parked right there on Graynold. Of course, I chased after the guys, but they got away. Which I've done quite a few times. I have 2 children. There's probably 12 kids on the block. Okay, maybe 15 or more young children. When my children were young and we would hear a speeding car, if we were at the top of the street or the bottom of the street, and we would hear a speeding car coming from whichever direction, I would ask them to stand behind one of the magnolia trees, because God forbid these people lose control, they were going to take out one of us. Additionally, everybody's front yards are somewhat unprotected, and if any of these individuals lose control, they will end up in somebody's home. So, thank you very much for your consideration. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Sarzik Sardarian, forgive me, pronunciation?
Hello, my name is Serge Sardarian. I'm living in 1125 Graynold. I'm living over there more than 10 years. Before was good, but recently is very bad because the people go too fast, and the accident happened that they hit my car. It was my car, and the other car flipped over. You know, that's very dangerous. Now it's too dangerous. That reason we are. My family applied for put the harms. If please it's possible, put the harms. Thank you very much.
Recently, you've had airplanes landing nearby. Carbus Mordarian, and this is the last card I have. If anybody else wants to speak, please give me your card.
Good evening. My name is Carbus Muradian. I live in Graynold Avenue, 27 years, and I agree in that street they put bumps because people driving fast, very dangerous. Even every day when my wife going to work, I have to go out, look both sides, speeding cars or not, and they say, okay, you can go, for safety. The rest things, everything they say already, that will be necessary because that's dangerous. Many young families now there living, they have children, and that is why danger for him also, and they playing there. And then when they speeding fast going up, and when we open the windows the morning, the dust coming the home. That also no good. Maybe I forgot something to say again, but anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Last card, Mashala Carrillo.
My name is Michelle Carrillo, and I reside in
Mr. Dwyer's building at 1100 Graynold Avenue. This is a major problem on our street, not only for people that are in private automobiles, but also UPS drivers, FedEx trucks, and as much as I hate to say it, even city employees in city, garbage trucks or maintenance vehicles, and they just pick up so much speed going up and down Graynold. I am at home most of the day. I live by myself. It's incredibly traumatizing to hear, these crashes in the middle of the night and wake up at 3 a.m. to flashing lights. I also have a neighbor who is in the same position as I am. She's single. She is basically afraid to walk out into the alley to throw away her trash because she's afraid she's going to get hit. I was not aware that there was a petition circulating. If it's not too late to add my name, I would love to, but had I known ahead of time that something like that was in effect, I would have been the first one to sign it. That's really all I have to say. And one of the most disconcerting things is that it's not only the people that don't live in the neighborhood, but I've also noticed a few cars that are residents of Graynold that just tear up and down this street. And I'm not sure if it's a young male testosterone thing or what, but I really would like to see something done so that way, single women like myself and 80-year-olds and 10-year-old kids walking their dogs aren't victims of these traffic violators. So thank you very much.
Thank you. No more cards. I'll close public discussion. Commissioners?
Well, I'll take a stab at going first here. Maybe the folks that the last speaker mentioned were the two that were against the petition because they want to be speeding up and down. I went over to Graynold on Saturday and drove the street several times, in fact, right after the Transportability Expo. And so Saturday is probably a little bit less of a typical time. And I think I pretty much noticed just about everything that's been mentioned so far. First of all, that Graynold is a signalized intersection at Glen Oaks, which is not the case with Idlewood and Norton. And also the median across Glen Oaks is blocks through traffic across Glen Oaks at Idlewood and at Norton. I also drove through the alley on both sides of Graynold. And again, it being Saturday, it was not a great deal of traffic, but it's interesting to hear the observations of the people who live there. My wife was with me, and she was actually the one who pointed out the proximity to the Hoover Toll Keppel school complex in the area, which is off of Glenwood, and I know we've had to deal with traffic calming on Glenwood as well in the past. I was glad to hear one of the speakers mention that there are no speed limit signs in the stretch between Glen Oaks and Glenwood, because I kept looking for one and I thought, am I missing the speed limit sign? I did notice there is the one on Graynold on the other side of Glenwood, but I didn't see any speed limit signs on this particular stretch that we're considering. The fact that there is the slight curve there as it approaches Glen Oaks is, especially if you're not familiar with it, is a little bit deceptive, maybe a little bit disconcerting, especially if I can imagine if you're traveling at a high rate of speed. It really is a nice street with those magnolia trees, especially when they're in bloom like they are now. And I noticed also the light standards there are the old-fashioned kind of light standards, which are really nice, suitable for that neighborhood. I'm not sure if there's anything or what we might be able to do in regards to the alley, and it didn't occur to me that people who were too impatient to wait at the red light are going to go zooming down that alley. And maybe there's something our traffic and transportation staff can do in terms of engineering solutions to help out there. I'm kind of fond of saying that nobody really likes speed bumps all that much, but the fact of the matter is they are a countermeasure that cannot be ignored. You can ignore signs, you can ignore lines painted on the street, and a lot of drivers unfortunately do, but the speed humps can't be ignored. One of the things that has been part of my education about installing speed bumps, and it's something my colleague Commissioner Sahakian mentions, is, and people should be aware, they will add a noise factor as vehicles go over them, especially for those homes that are in close proximity to where the speed bumps are. And that, I imagine, may be, a small price to pay for the capability to slow down traffic. So given that all of the requirements have been met, I would be in favor of supporting this project.
Any other discussion?
Just briefly, I would add to that. Now, first, I hope that we don't have cars going 70, 80 miles per hour, because if you do, you don't want to have speed humps, because a car can easily lose control and end up in one of those residences at that speed. So hopefully they will slow down. But with the young minds, and we do have a large young population in the city, just the same as the elderly population, and so hopefully that's going to slow some traffic down. I don't think it's going to impact the volume. Honestly, the 949, it's not as high as I would expect for cut-through traffic. But I'm also in favor of installing the speed humps, and we need to be ready immediately to tackle the problem on the adjacent streets, because it's going to just move it to another street.
Yes.
Okay, I'll start off by first saying thank you for coming, and it's very heartening to see residents, Ms. Brownlett and Mr. Miller, you've been there for so long. It's nice to see that you have a lot of passion and you're still fighting for what is just a very beautiful area of Glendale, and you want to preserve your quality of life there, and I appreciate you coming to speak, all of you. I also am in favor of the humps. If it had been not a signalized intersection, and if there weren't that raised median on Glen Oaks, I probably would have had more hesitation. As Commissioner Sahakian brought up, that fear of shifting it, it still might possibly shift it. However, I'm a little bit more comforted knowing that I don't suspect it's as attractive a thing to do once you put the humps, and because of the median there. So I am in favor of it, and I hope it works.
Yeah, I got two questions for Mr. Bagnanian. What is the first signal left to the right of this intersection? Where is that located?
The intersection.
Highland.
Yeah, Highland is the major intersection that basically serves the Hoover Toll Keppel. Most of our traffic that goes toward the school uses that. The traffic that pretty much what we've observed uses Graynold is the neighborhood traffic is coming into that area and then goes up and then uses Glenwood to go straight toward the Hoover School. And because also Highland gets a lot of traffic during peak hours, some people just if they're continue going west, then they come over to Graynold and then shoot down.
Was there any traffic study for Hoover and this area in the past?
Entire Hoover High, Toll Keppel, we did a major traffic management plan where we installed speed humps. We made the streets both sides of Hoover Toll Keppel one way,
Was it after that sad accident in the
Yes,
Boulevard?
and then we had Olmsted has speed humps on the north. We have South Street south of Hoover, Keppel and Toll have speed humps, and then we put in close to 16 crossing guards all around the school just to manage the pedestrian traffic because it's in conflict with the vehicular traffic.
Neighborhood traffic calming program, why isn't this a policy?
It's a program. We call it a program.
Has it been through council and has been approved?
Yeah, it's been in effect a number of years. It's a program that has established guidelines that council approved in terms of the type of traffic calming measures we can implement, including speed humps, edge lines, traffic circles, roundabouts, speed humps, speed bumps, speed lumps, the ones that we actually are, whenever we have the speed humps on a street that is for emergency response or it's on a fire route, we put in these openings on what we call them lumps so that the fire trucks can go through, although again still slows them down, but it is what we've tried in other streets. So it's a program, it has the requirements as I listed here for volume and speed and petitions.
All right, program or policy, it just seems to be satisfying all of the conditions, and I'm for it too. And I also request that you look into the alley situation. That is something that it may create extra. If people avoid Graynold, they're going to find some other way to get to Glen Oaks. I assume that because it's a signalized, people who want to make a left turn on Glen Oaks, they're choosing Graynold to speed up on the streets.
Maybe we can look into it, although it becomes a little difficult to enforce. Maybe at least during peak hours we could put some turn restrictions at the alley.
Alleys are prima facie, right? All of the alleys.
15 miles an hour. We'll certainly look into potential for speed humps in the alley in that stretch.
That's right.
That could also be a deterrent. And as I said, we'll look into some turn restrictions, although it's difficult to enforce, but it's also a deterrent where certain peak hours, sometimes at the alleys, you can put in a no right turn or a no left turn during the peak hour morning, afternoon. That way, people will not be making a right turn to do a shortcut to the next street to the east or to the west.
Thank you.
In conclusion, I'd also like to thank the neighbors for coming by. I live in the area, and I've taken Graymold a number of times, I confess. I know part of the problem is the schools. Highland can be very congested during the school hours, and part of the problem is traffic backs up on Glenwood at the stop sign at Highland, so even Norton is blocked. So sometimes the only way to get across Glenwood is to take Graynold. But I think that the humps will help that. Hopefully we can think about getting a speed sign for what it's worth on the street. And of course, I agree with my colleagues on the alley issue.
Mr. Chairman, in general, in all the residential streets, it's our policy, because it's prima facie 25 or 25 mile an hour, we don't put in, speed limit signs. However, if there's major requests or we have issues, we put in the signs first, and then we'll look at the other options. Usually, they won't, honestly, it doesn't make too much of a difference. You see them the first time, but then after that, it just becomes part of the landscape. But it's something we'll look into. But with the installation of speed humps, there's signage that goes along that shows the location of the hump and the recommended speed over the hump, which is 15. So upon approval of this, city will go ahead and install the humps, and we believe, based on our past experience, they're effective in reducing speed, especially when you're dealing at the speeds of 85th of 35 miles an hour. They are effective at a higher speed than at the lower end of the speed spectrum.
When could the residents expect the humps to go in?
Usually what happens is we include these as part of one of our street improvement programs so that we can, the cost is more cost effective. I would say between 3 to 4 months at the outside. If we can get them done sooner, we will do that. But sometimes it's very expensive just to do 3 humps. So we try to include them as part of a street improvement program, an asphalt job or a slurry seal project. We have a couple that is in the works right now, so we'll try to get them in as soon as possible.
John, a real quick question. How long do you, I know you put notification, probably some orange flags out there to warn the motorists that there's now been a change in the pavement on there. How long do you keep the flags out there?
Usually we put them up, they usually stay there for at least 6 months.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Unless somebody takes them away.
In which case it's 2 days. Do I hear a motion?
I'll move that the Transportation and Parking Commission concurs with the Director of Public Works in recommending the installation of 3 speed humps on Graynold Avenue between Glen Oaks Boulevard and Glenwood Road as set forth in the report of the Director of Public Works dated June 25th, 2012.
I second the motion.
A roll call, please.
Commissioner Wiseman,
Yes.
Commissioner Sahakian,
Yes.
Commissioner Yakubian,
Yes.
Commissioner Mangasarian, Chairperson Plon.
Yes. So you got your speed bumps. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
What happened many years ago was not repeated. Next item, please.
Item 6 is Commission staff comments updates.
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple of updates for you. For the next commission meeting in July, we're planning to bring in the South Brand preferential parking program that the commission had reviewed a couple of times, and now the ordinance is in the works, so we plan to bring the ordinance to the commission to get your recommendation to the city council. So that would be scheduled for our July meeting. Also, we have another speed hump request. It's on Western that we're working on, as it is on a fire emergency response route. We're looking at that to see whether or not we can recommend approval, and considering that the fire department does not like to have speed humps on fire emergency response. And Western is one of the key north-south streets from Glen Oaks to the north, and we're working on that, but we will come back to commission for your July meeting with a recommendation whether to approve or deny it. So that would be something that we will be bringing back to you. Also, if I may, I wanted to give you a quick update on the Honolulu Avenue Road Diet case that was considered by the City Council on June 19. City Council wanted to have an update on the Honolulu Road Diet, considering that we had 2 outreach meetings in March and April, the community meetings in Spar Heights, and then we also had I attended with the Mayor Quintero to the June 2nd Whitingwood annual meeting because they requested us to discuss the road diet issue on Honolulu. And in general, the meetings, what we presented to City Council was essentially the meetings that we attended, essentially the majority of the people who were there, they were concerned about the installation of the road diet, considering that they felt it's going to take a lane away, it could cause delay, and the fact that they believed there wasn't enough bicyclists using Honolulu to justify installation of the road diet. On the other hand,
could you refresh my memory? The road diet would be looking at Trader Joe's. Would it be just west of Trader Joe's?
Yes, I'm sorry. I should have given you the limits of the road diet was from, if you use Orangedale or Trader Joe's at the east end, it will go all the way to Ramsdale. To Ramsdale. So from Ramsdale to Orangedale or would be at the west end and at the east end. And the cross-section we would have is by taking away essentially 1 lane in each direction. We were going to have 1 lane eastbound, 1 lane westbound, a center two-way left turn lane, and then bike lanes on both sides without removal of on-street parking. Throughout the update meetings or the outreach meeting, we knew there was going to be concerns at the Trader Joe's at Orangedale, given the congestion that Trader Joe's, which is good. I mean, everybody likes Trader Joe's. So the traffic congestion there was a concern about taking a lane away. We've redesigned that intersection so that we can maintain the through lane and created a right turn lane that can go actually into Trader Joe's, provides additional queuing capacity so that we can deal with the congestion. We cannot remove it, but it's still there. At Rosemont, we also have a Montessori school where there's a lot of pick-up, drop-off activity in the morning and the afternoon. we designed that pickup drop-off, so essentially we will maintain the lane, existing lanes there, so that we will have a parking lane and a drop-off lane and an additional lane that the through traffic can move without getting trapped behind the pickup and drop-off activity. And then we also updated the City Council based on the tasks that the direction from Council was that we proceed with the road diet. We did our outreach meetings. We did prepare the signing and striping plan, included that as part of a bid package. We bid the documents, bid the road diet project for the striping portion as part of a slurry seal project that includes Honolulu. We collected traffic data before and after, before the installation of the road diet. Basically, we looked at the volumes at different cross-section along Honolulu to make sure that once we put in the road diet, we can see the traffic volume increases or decreases. We did travel time speed studies. We also looked, we did bicycle volume counts to see how many bicycles were using it. And we looked at the accident pattern and the history before. And then we also, Council directed us to look at a Michigan study what Commissioner Sahakian had sent to us, as well as the commissioners. Presented basically the highlights of that study were indicated that if, based on the Michigan study that was done by Michigan State University, that if you have a street that has 10,000 average daily traffic, or the peak hour is about 1,000, they based on the 24 locations that they had studied, their study indicated that there could be a significant delay at the intersection, especially if you have a four-way stop. And that the impacts in terms of safety, reduction in safety, was not statistically significant, and that's what we looked at. This is a very comprehensive study, and there have been other studies also that show that road diets on a case-by-case basis have been effective in terms of reduction of speed or reduction in the accidents, pure number of accidents, before and after the installation of the road diets. And there has been a variety in terms of streets that had between 5,000 to 10,000 or 12,000 ADT. There are studies about those. There's studies that show road diets on streets between 10 to 15,000, 15 to 18,000, and so on. Federal Highway Administration has a guideline that road diets can be considered for streets which have 20,000, and if it's above 20,000, then it becomes a problem. Below 20,000, on a case-by-case basis, can be evaluated and considered for that. So we presented all of this information to the City Council. There were almost 40 speakers, 35 to 40 speakers at the council meeting. And, we had people who were in favor of the road diet, people who were against the road diet. City Council, considering there was only 3 of the council members present, decided that they will postpone any decision on the road diet to their July 10 meeting, and then so that the other 2 council members can review the meeting, the discussions and the presentations and all the staff presented information, and then they will make a decision at that point at their July meeting. So that's just a quick summary of what was transpired as part of the...
For the road diet, actually I was just up there today at the Trader Joe's. The first block or 2 west of Trader Joe's is commercial, and then it becomes, I guess, mixed use?
There's a commercial. There's some commercial in between, but you have multifamily residential and some single-family residential. You have a senior housing, Mountain View, that is for the seniors, and that issue about crossing Honolulu became an issue at one of the outreach meetings, which we're actually designing a crosswalk there with flashers, with yellow flashers, that regardless whether or not a road diet goes in or not, we think that is a safety enhancement that we can accommodate at that location. And the striping changes that I mentioned at the Trader Joe's or Orangedale, we will go ahead and do that as well, regardless of what type of a configuration Honolulu is going to take. So we will do that.
Well, the reason I ask is because, I mean, the paper reported a lot of opposition, at least at the meetings. It's hard to know whether that's representative of the community. But is there any consideration given or any value to maybe pushing the whole thing one block west. So the Trader Joe and the next block remain as they are essentially, although the right turn lane is a good idea. And then when it gets more residential, then there the bike lane kicks in, and maybe there's less congestion just a bit further down.
I think it was just the overall sentiment. The people who are not in favor of it is just that there's not enough bicyclists on the street, and why take away a lane where the existing bicyclists can comfortably ride the street. But on the other side, if you want to look at it from a traffic calming standpoint, where by putting in a road diet, there is a center two-way left turn lane that you can use for starting or ending a left turn in and out of driveway, so it makes it more convenient. Or instead of crossing 4 lanes, now you will have to cross one moving lane in each direction. That's an advantage. But then from La Crescenta to Ramsdale, there is already a two-way left turn lane. So a road diet doesn't provide that advantage as far as creating a center two-way left turn. So these are all the different opinions that are all valid, that we've experienced it personally through the meetings or through a lot of emails and whatnot. So the section that you're mentioning, I think what we've designed, we're talking about almost a mile, like 0.9 miles. So if we start cutting into that by starting the bike lanes a little farther to the west, it really takes away for actually, if we're going to go through this and do this, I don't think another block is going to make a big difference into the change of what people think about the road diet idea.
Are most objections basically based on congestion? Or
yeah, the congestion and the fact that people figure out right now there's going to be bicyclists take away a lane anyway right now if there's one or two riding. So if you're down to one lane, they're still going to take it, especially on weekends where larger groups of bicyclists are riding. So if it's down to one lane, that's a problem. On the other hand, bicyclists that are in favor of, residents are in favor of it, they feel that it will calm down the street and it's a nicer street to walk or ride or cross the street. It makes it easier. And, you know, in the White Wingwood meeting, for example, I was surprised. We have some residents who said, if we put in the road diet, what are you going to do with the speed limit? And I said, well, anytime we change the lane configuration by vehicle code, we have to do a radar speed survey, engineering radar speed survey, which means that potentially the speed limit can go from 30 to a 35 to down to a 30, considering that you're going to have more traffic in a single lane, so that will cause traffic to slow down. And they didn't want that. They felt that the free flow, 35-mile speed is what should be on that street like any other street. So why are you restricting? This is the first time, honestly, that I go to a meeting where everybody wants the speed to be reduced or speed limit to go down, and here, you know, you have residents who like the speed like it is, because at 25 mile an hour, where we used to have it years ago, they felt that you can't drive Honolulu at 25 or 30. You just, by the sheer nature of the type of street it is, at 35 is a safe speed to drive.
And have you done studies, or can you pinpoint the minutes delay? If congestion is an issue, have you been able to model, well, if all the traffic's into 2 lanes rather than 4, what the actual minute difference is?
We've done a travel time study, and the study shows, you know, you can basically go from Ramsdale to Orangedale in about 2.5 minutes, 2 minutes, 30 seconds. So with a road diet, you could potentially add a minute or two during peak times, depending on if you're at a 4-way stop, you know, potentially you're going to have more congestion at the signalized intersection, let's say La Crescenta. Some of that delay can be reduced by changing the timing of the traffic signal. So we have the before data, we will monitor it. We have the delays at the intersections. We've got the delay in between intersections. We measured all that. We've done so many runs back and forth during peak hours, non-peak hours. So if the road diet goes in, we can do the same runs and we'll see the difference. The challenge we will have, I think, is what we were challenged in some of the meetings or from folks, is that what is the success threshold for the road diet? Is it going to be the number of bicyclists who use the Honolulu? Is it going to be the delay, or is it going to be a reduction in speed? What is acceptable to say this is a good project, or what it's acceptable, what is not acceptable? So that's given the.
And then what was your answer?
I don't have an answer because if you look at most of the road diet studies, there's not necessarily a threshold. It's just that what is the before and after indicated? If the accidents went down, if the speeds went down, if there was an increase in the usage of bicyclists, then that was considered a success. In most cases, they left the road diet in because that's what the city or the agency wanted to do. But the accident experience on Honolulu is not that high. We had 4 bicycle accidents in 10 years. So I don't think we can improve that with putting in a road diet. Hopefully it doesn't go up. So to say it got worse because more bicyclists are going to use it. The travel time, if it goes up by 2 minutes, is it really bad? If it takes you 2 minutes instead of 4 minutes, as a resident, as a driver, is that a really bad? Now, if you take a percentage, it says, it's a 200% increase. But if it's only 2 minutes, now if it's at the peak hour, you're rushing to go to work, I don't know. We have people who complain to us if they're sitting at an intersection for 20 seconds, they'll call us and say, I was there for 5 minutes. So no, cycle in is 90 seconds. There's no way the signal will take 5 minutes to cycle in, except if there's a problem with it. So it's a lot of perception problems, and that's what we need to decide what's good public policy. In this case, what is the best option to consider. So we're looking at that option. We're looking at also maybe sharrows, putting the sharrows in. That could be another option. It could be another option not to do it on Honolulu and do it in one of the other candidate streets. Those are things that potentially could be discussed at the council meeting on July.
I just wanted to mention a couple things, and as Jono knows, and maybe my colleagues know as well, I've been fairly heavily involved in this. I attended both of the outreach meetings at Spar Heights, and I was also at last Tuesday's City Council meeting where this was discussed. And at the City Council meeting, you had mentioned that about 40 approximately people spoke on that. At least 25 of those people spoke in favor of the road diet, and a lot of them were local residents of the Montrose area. There's also a petition that the Walk Bike Glendale organization has gotten over 300 signatures on in favor of the road diet, and I think probably, I'm not sure necessarily what your experience is, Jono, in Glendale, but it seems to me that it's kind of unusual to get that many people to sign a petition in favor of a proposed project. One of the issues that kind of gets swept under the rug a little is the discussion tends to center on bicycles. This is also about pedestrians because of the fact that some of the convalescent homes and other facilities that cater to seniors in the area actually have rules against their tenants crossing the street, which I think is a great idea that you've mentioned, regardless of whether the road diet goes in, that we have flashing indicator crosswalks in those areas. The addition of the center left turn lane in the areas that currently doesn't have one is going to help motorists for both inbound and outbound left turns. I'm friends with the Montrose Bike Shop on Facebook, and they just recently posted something about they are trying to educate their customers and their staff regarding the fact that Glendale PD is now accelerating enforcement of bicyclists that break the law in terms of blowing through stop signs. And I know this is something Commissioner Sahakian has mentioned in the past as being a problem. a big piece of this is education, and I'm starting to see some movement in that direction now in order to educate the bicycling community of their responsibilities to obey the law.
Commissioner Weissman, would you say part of the opposition may have been based on some blowback by bicyclists not being...
I'm certain that
I think
would be
that
part of it,
was
yes.
also a common, if I may, it was also a common issue as far as bicyclists not obeying the same motor vehicle laws that motor vehicles have to, and when we because we have a camera that we videotape on to do the counts, and that shows that some of the four-way stops where, almost 50% go through, the other 50% slow down, not necessarily complete stop. So that's been something that, considering those issues, again, at the end of the day, we want to improve safety, so the police department will be doing a lot more enforcement than they have done before.
And so I think the bicyclists are starting to get the message now, and the bicycling community and the businesses that support them are trying to reinforce that. I would also note that the Glendale News Press editorialized recently in favor of the road diet, and of course one of the major points is this is an experiment. If it does not work out, it can be reversed. And
did you want to say something, Mrs.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, I just wanted to remind the Commission that this is staff and Commission comments, so we really can't get into a debate or an extended discussion, and I just wanted to let you know that that's how it's agendized tonight. If we do want to do an extended discussion, new information coming, I would suggest placing an item on the Commission's agenda for next time, and then there could be more of a free discussion.
Okay, well, I'll take that as a hint to to curtail my remarks at this point.
Mr. Chairman, I will include that as an item, information item at least. I don't, depending on the council action for your July meeting, because it is an important issue that Commission was involved in it, and we will put that on the July meeting so you'll have more chance to discuss it.
Any other comments?
I hate to be monopolizing the microphone here. I did just want to briefly mention that I was at the Transportability Expo on Saturday, and just wanted to thank the city staff members that were there, giving up their time on a Saturday to help make that a good event. It was great to see our taxi companies, in addition to the Dial-A-Ride and Access Paratransit and the Beeline, exhibiting the vehicles that are able to handle wheelchair patrons. And wanted to mention, especially for those of us who are over 55, I talked to the folks at AAA, and they actually will give you a discount on your insurance if you're an older driver who takes the safe driving course for older drivers.
Now you tell me.
55 and over.
I should start.
And last but not least, I also wanted to mention thank you to the Jewel City Kiwanis for supplying the hot dogs and chips and drinks, which we also took advantage of. It was a good event, and it was nice to see a lot of people there. Thanks.
Thank you. Anything else? Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Yes. Motion to adjourn.
Adjourn. Thank you.